got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. And like today's founder, Dan Zawacki, I'm going to introduce you in a second, but you need to check out past episodes. So this is specifically pertinent to this conversation, Dan. You need to check out past episode. People should check out past episode. Gino Wickman. Gino Wickman, if you don't know, is the founder of EOS Worldwide, an organization that's helped over 70,000 companies use and implement EOS tools. He's the author of, you could see some of the books behind Dan if you're watching the video, Traction, Rocket Fuel, Entrepreneurial Leap. There's so many that are amazing, and just learning from him has been amazing. Also, check out my interview with Mark Winters, who co-authored Rocket Fuel with Gino Wickman as well, which you can see behind Dan. That book definitely really helped my thinking, Dan, about having someone who's an integrator and a visionary and what the difference is. So it's been game changing to even know what that is. Okay, so I suggest everyone check out Rocket Fuel and Mark Winters' work as well. Before I introduce you to today's guest, who has been a pioneer in many different things, and you'll see what I mean in a second. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25, which I co-founded with my business partner, John Corcoran. And what we do is we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. It could be partners, it could be strategic partners, it could be anyone. And basically we do that because we help you run your podcast. Okay. And the number one thing for me, Dan, in my life is relationships. So I'm always looking at a way to give to my best relationships. And since 2008, the best way for me has been featuring and profiling amazing people like you on my podcast and sharing with the world what you do. And so if you are a company and you've thought about starting a podcast, first of all, you should. Second of all, if you have questions, you can email us. Go to rise25.com, support at rise25media.com. Today's guest, I'm super excited to introduce you. Justin Breen is the person who's like, you need to have Dan Zawacki on. Justin Breen, you can go to his site, brepicllc.com. He basically creates your top connections for visionaries and entrepreneurs. Okay, so check it out. In 1987, we'll rewind to 1987, Dan, for a second.
Oh, the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, the Wayback Machine. He founded a company called Lobster Gram. It's exactly what it sounds like, by the way. He delivered live lobsters and seafood around the country as gifts. And he was the first person in the world to do this. And he created a new market. And he was featured in Forbes, Wall Street Journal. He was on Oprah and 500 other media outlets. And after 3 decades of running Lobster Gram, he sold it. And now he runs fourmores.com. That's the number 4, and then mores.com, where he helps your organization implement EOS. And the 4 mores are more structure, more growth, more profit, more fun. And Dan's going to talk all about the journey and about that. So Dan, thanks for joining me.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me on. That's an awesome introduction.
It's all true. It's even better behind the scenes. You know, what's cool, Dan, is the original idea. You live in Peoria and you call yourself an accidental entrepreneur. Okay. So what was the original idea behind Lobster Gram?
Well, being an accidental entrepreneur, some people have these great business plans and all this. Not me. Not saying it, you shouldn't, but I worked for Honeywell, and I sold computers that were as big as my desk that ran commercial buildings. I'm not even kidding. There's more power in my cell phone than in these computers. And so it would turn on and off the lights and the HVAC and heating and all that kind of stuff. And just out of school, and I did it, and boy, it was a lot of fun. And I found out I was really, really pretty darn good at selling it. And the problem was that all my contracts came up in January. So I took all my clients out for dinners, and then it turned into lunches. And this is back in like 85, 86. And back then, no one went out and drank iced tea. I mean, everybody Jack and Cokes, and it was a party. But good thing my liver was, like 23 years old. So it was okay. But it literally was my whole November and December was just going out, taking out clients, because the more clients I got, the more I went out. So I said, I need a great gift. I'm thinking, I'm like, maybe Omaha Steaks. I'm like, everybody gets Omaha Steaks. Great company though. And I said, Harry and David. And I'm thinking, yeah, I work with a lot of these engineers. I'm going to go up and go, hey, here's this nice pear for you. It probably like just belt me. And so I was one of those kids that I always loved lobster. Okay. When I would go out with my parents, I would always order lobster and they'd say, no, he's getting the cheeseburger. But every once in a while I'd get a lobster. And so I started thinking, gosh, they're fun. It's unique and it's memorable. And by golly, I'm going to find somebody that can ship lobsters out for me. So I tried and I called my friend up in Boston and he sent me the yellow pages and I called up all the lobster guys out there and they all said the same thing. That's stupid. That's the dumbest idea. If it was a good idea, someone would be doing it. And I'm like, gosh, they're probably right. But anyways, can you at least send me, a couple hundred lobsters and then I will figure a way to deliver them. And they're like, yeah, we could do that. Because, they would send them to restaurants. So that's what they did. And so I didn't know anything about lobsters except I liked them. So in the company car, I put a blue tarp in there and I drove to the airport and I put all the lobsters. There's 180 lobsters crawling around my back of my car, just all over. My packaging was horrible. It was a jewel bag. And then I bought a couple cases of lemons, a couple cases of butter, and a big bag of bows. So I open up the trunk. I put 2 lobsters in there, stick of butter, a lemon, and I'd staple a bow on there and write a little gift card saying, hey, thanks for your business. It was fun golfing with you or fun doing this or whatever. And I drove around for 2.5 days and it was like playing Santa Claus with lobsters.
You hand delivered them.
Hand delivered them. People didn't know it. And it was fun. The people's faces were just priceless. I just, no appointments, walk in, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, open it up and they go, are these live? I'd be like, they are, see you later, gotta go. Because, I had like 60 clients I had to go deliver all these things. So I was on a roll. And one of the clients worked for the Department of Corrections. He's like, Dan, I saw him like a month later. He goes, Dan, you gonna do anything with this lobster thing? And I said, and he goes, well, if you're not, he goes, my wife wants to. And I go, well, yeah, I've been working on a business plan. And I hadn't done nothing about it. But I'm like, here's this guy. He's like a mentor to me. If he thinks it's a good idea, well, by golly, I should at least think about this. So that night, this is the craziest thing. I go to my little studio apartment, which is just little thing, sit at my round table, and I start putting together a to-do list, which was, I still have it too. It's pretty cool. And number 1 is get lobsters. Number 2, make a name. Number 3, it's so funny. How do credit cards work? How does someone give you these numbers over the phone and magically it goes into your bank account? I mean, that's how naive of a business person I was.
Well, I mean, at the time, there's no internet.
No internet.
So, like now people are like, oh, you just get a credit card. You send them a straight payment or something. No, that didn't exist at the time.
No. I mean, it was crazy. And then, just coming up with a name and an 800
It was
number.
actually illegal, Dan. So I interviewed Joe Sugarman, who started Blue Blocker Sunglasses, and he came up with the 1-800 number. Before he came up with it, it was illegal to take credit cards over the phone.
Oh, geez.
So it's not like that was, I don't think it's dumb at all, right?
Yeah. Well, at the time, it just seemed like now when it's like, duh, right? But I think it was just a list page of things to do. And so at night, instead of going out to the bars, I would try and work on these things and then check it off. Finally, I'm done. I got them all checked off. I'm like, holy crap, I think I have a company. And that's how it started.
What was, Dan, the shipping evolution? So obviously it goes from jewel trunk and tarp and jewel bag to later on when the business was mature. How are you shipping them out?
All right. So there's a pretty crazy thing. So I didn't know how to do it. Okay. So that was number one. So my first one is I took a cardboard box and I put a big 5-pound block of dry ice in there. And I put 2 live lobsters in there, wrapped it up, taped it real good, sent it to my buddy down in Florida. He gets it the next day because he had to ship it next day. I'm all excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, how are they? What happened? And he goes, I go, what happened? He's like, well, they're not alive. And he goes, and it looks like they kind of blew up. They're like pieces all over. I go, what? So it turned out that, of course, dry ice, carbon dioxide, sublimes, turns into a gas when it melts. And so it asphyxiated the lobsters probably within 60 seconds if I closed the box. So that was one issue. Next, dry ice is like 100 and some degrees below zero. So it actually froze them solid. And so as FedEx was tossing them around, they just like shattered. So that was not the way to do it. And so I just kept playing around with doing it. And finally I used a styrofoam cooler. I think I got it at Walgreens. Put it in a box, put blue ice in there, and I got some seaweed from a lobster guy, and that worked.
So they eat this. They eat it as they're going, or to stay alive, or what's with
they
what's
do,
with the
but
seaweed?
The seaweed is more for insulation.
Oh,
So it doesn't get smushed, and it keeps them moist because their gills or lungs of lobsters are like 40% efficient in the air, so they'll live for a while out. So that's why we had to send them next day delivery, and so that's how we did it. And then the FDA found out about it, and that's another story.
There's a couple of turning points that I see in your story that I thought were pretty cool, and I'm going to give full credit to your business for your sister. No, I'm just kidding. Your sister told you to get on radio.
Yes.
It seems like that was huge for you.
That was the turning point of the company. So all you brothers out there, listen to your sisters. But so I am there. Okay, it's about 3 months, and I've sold, I call them mercy sales, right? That's like your friends, of course, your mom and dad, your uncle, people that just feel sorry.
Listen,
for you.
if the internet was around, Dan, at that time, it would have blown up. I mean, just the word of mouth of something like that, it would blow up. But anyways,
crazy.
Yeah,
but
keep going. Yeah.
No internet. Al Gore didn't think of it yet. But so my sister, she calls me up, and I'm almost in tears because literally I've told everybody, hey, I'm an entrepreneur now, right? I've got a company. I haven't sold really anything. And so literally, I mean, I remember talking to her to this day. This is 34 years later. And she's like, well, why don't you try and get on the radio? Jonathan Brandmeier. He was like the top guy in Chicago, almost the country. And just call him and, see what he has to say. So first of all, Johnny B was my hero. And I listened to him all the time when I was living in Chicago. So it was very nerve-wracking to talk to your hero. So I practiced literally in front of the mirror for a week of what I would say, and then what he would say, and then he'd say this, and I would say this. And so I finally get the guts to call Johnny B. So I talked to the receptionist, and the receptionist is like, yeah, Mr. Brandmeier's in. I'll send you right through. All of a sudden, everything I thought was blown away. I thought I'm going to have to go through like 2-3 people to get to him. Picks up the phone, and I just go, my name's Dan Zawacki. I get this company in Peoria, Illinois. We ship like levers out. And I'm just talking like a mile a minute. And he goes, whoa, what? He goes, talk slower. So I told him, I said, hey, I'm shipping live lobsters. I ship around the country. And he goes, you do what? I go, hey, I'm shipping live lobsters around the country. And he goes, and where? And I go, Peoria, Illinois. And he goes, Peoria? Why not Maine? I go, I live in Peoria. He goes, can you come up next week? I go, sure. So he invited me on a show. And he goes, but. And I'm like, there's the but. He goes, you got to give away 3 Lobster Grams to my listeners. I'm like, wow, I would have gave away 30. And so I'm like, okay. And so I basically told the little checkout board that it was going to be on a Friday I was going to be on, that I was going to make cold calls in Springfield, Illinois on Friday. And instead I couldn't lie to my boss's face, but I could lie to the checkout board. And then I went on up to Chicago and got on the air for, it was 12 minutes, which was unheard of. And at that time, his hour or his per minute rate on the radio was $1,800.
Wow.
So it was amazing. And it's a blur. I don't even remember it. I remember being there, but it was like just crazy because I had never been on the radio before, anything like that. I just remember I wore a suit jacket and I was pitting out from my t-shirt to my shirt to my suit jacket. I was a wreck. And sold over 180 packages.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, well, I guess this crazy idea is going to work.
What at the time, what was it priced and what did people get like for a package at the time?
So I totally underpriced it, but pricing is one of the hardest things to do, especially with a new product, new market, new idea. So on that $99, including delivery, next day delivery, you got 2 lobsters. God, I sound like I'm on the radio doing a commercial. 2 live lobsters, guaranteed to arrive live. Lemon, butter, shell crackers, bibs. I even put the 12-quart enamel and steel cooking pot in there. A long stem candle, glass candle holder.
Wow.
And matches, because no one had matches. No one really was smoking back then. And cooking instructions. And
$99. That's a steal.
it was a steal. I totally underpriced it because I didn't really know how to price anything. But I learned, and but I did that for a couple of years, and then finally I had to add shipping onto it. And then
shipping's expensive. That's heavy, all that stuff that you're sending.
It was a 14-pound package and next day delivery, which is most expensive. So I think I added like $29 onto it. So it was like $129 at that time. But nobody was doing free delivery. I was like the first person to do free delivery back then. It just seemed like the right thing to do. So Jeff Bezos out there, he says he takes credit. I do.
That's Jeff is like, I learned free delivery from that Lobster Gram I received in 1989.
He probably got one. I had so many people that were famous got Lobster Grams. It was crazy.
So the radio, you then doubled down on radio after that.
Yeah. So might not be the brightest guy in the world, but hey, I figured out it worked there. It's going to work somewhere else. So I called up the Steve Dahl and Gary Meyer show, and very popular show. Basically used the same lines, and they were like, hey, come on the studio. And I just kept doing that until I ran out of personalities. And then by that time, I actually had enough money where I had a budget and I could spend some money on radio. But I also learned the importance of live reads. And I also learned what a target market was. And that was literally the biggest bang for the buck, which turned out was conservative talk show hosts who do live reads.
Talking about the live read part, what did you discover?
I discovered that if they love lobsters, which they all of them did, you paid for a 60-second spot, it might go 90 seconds, might go 2 minutes. And part of what I learned, and I think is important for everybody listening, is that I made the personal connection with everybody. So before I would even think of letting them do a live read, I made sure that I could meet them face to face, and I would bring a Lobster Gram with me, live lobsters, the whole setup, and I would give it to them and let them try it so that they would get it. But the biggest thing I learned kind of accidentally was that they realized I wasn't a faceless agency, that I was a real person starting out. And what I found out is that they really wanted to help. And so, that I did that in Chicago. And I remember thinking to myself, gosh, if this works in Chicago, I wonder if I could work in New York. And I remember just going through my head, just complete head trash. Maybe this is just a fluke in in Chicago. So I went out to New York and I got a meeting with Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh and did the same thing. Brought them Lobster Grams, just told them the story, exactly what I said about, doing them out of my car and this. And they loved it. And they all were like, yeah, we're going to do a great job for you, but you have to let us give away Lobster Grams to our listeners. And we're not going to charge any extra for it. Just let us give them away, and we'll give you free plugs. And it turned out I was actually Sean Hannity's first national advertiser. And I think he has 500 out there now, but he was doing overnights back then. But we just hit it off, and I just knew that guy was in for greatness. And I remember him telling me, he goes, Dan, he goes, look, I'm just doing overnights right now. He goes, but I'm working on this syndicated deal. And he goes, but nobody wants to be the first one. And he's talking like Chevy, Coke, and all these freaking monster companies. He goes, they don't want to be the first one. He goes, would you be the first one? And he goes, if it works, he goes, I will just plug the hell out of you forever. And he goes, if it doesn't work, he goes, I'll plug the hell out of you in New York only. And so I remember thinking, all right. And that was my gold. When you talk about nuggets and that was the gold. And then I just duplicated that around the country in all the major markets.
Well, I love what you said too, Dan, about you would also sometimes barter for the ads. I mean, the first one, you basically got $20,000 worth of advertising at the time for free, right? But you then, it seemed like you knew that and you did it consciously.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So pay for a 60-second spot, give away a couple Lobster Grams, maybe they cost me $70. And it would turn into, hey, we're going to give a Lobster Gram out if you can answer this question or this question. And then it is, the two lines, literally like a 45-second spot for $70. But bartering, so many people, I talk to so many new entrepreneurs, I tell them, think about bartering. If you got something cool that people want, barter, right? Because cash is the hardest thing to do when you're starting. I mean, I literally started with $1,000, so I hear people always say, oh, I don't have any money. I go, I didn't either. But people like lobsters. I actually bartered, this is crazy, a brand new Lexus with a dealership in Chicago.
Wow.
I bartered gift certificates. $50,000 of gift certificates I bartered. And what they did is they would give out 500 every time someone would buy a brand new Lexus. They would give them a $500 Lobster Gram gift certificate, and as a thank you for being a customer. And boy, they got a ton of great publicity out of that.
I love that. So you got a car and you got a potential new customer who
Yeah.
is a great qualified customer because they just bought a Lexus.
Yeah,
Right?
I got a ton of clients out of that because they got them.
It's genius.
They loved it, and they would send them out as gifts to their friends who were all, pretty big shooters. Back in the '90s, a $50,000 Lexus is like 75 right now.
So how did you think about that, Dan? Did you go and pitch them and they're like, hey, I'll barter? How did you think about doing that?
So the older I got, the more I said, just ask, right? If you don't ask, no one's going to read your mind. And so I remember I wanted a Lexus. I was tired of driving around my little Chevy used pickup trucks, and I wanted to get a Lexus. And so I decided I was just going to drive right to the Lexus dealer, and the name on the sign, I was going to ask for that guy. And I did. He came out. I told him who it was. He had heard about Lobster Gram. So I was like, oh, okay, that's a good start. And I said, I really want to get a Lexus. And I told him, I said, and I think that, we could barter for it and it would be great because I know your car doesn't cost you that much. It doesn't cost the 50. So you'll get it. You'll get the gift certificates. You're going to make all your people happy. And this was like in October and Christmas is coming up. And so you can give everyone a great gift and you'll get all this great PR out of it. You know what? You could probably even mention it in your radio commercials. If you buy a Lexus now, you'll get a free $500 Lobster Gram gift certificate, which they ended up doing too.
Genius.
And so it worked. I walked out of there going, oh my gosh, what just happened? And I literally left with a new Lexus.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
I could have just seen you going up. I'm just going through the whole process as a normal customer. And at the end, how are you going to pay for this, sir? And you just open a briefcase full of these gift certificates. Good thing you told them on the front end and not waited to the end.
Well, the funny thing is, it was all done on a handshake. And he said, well, just give me the gift certificates within a week. And so
Wow.
I brought back, all these $50,000 gift certificates in the trunk of my new Lexus. And it was great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
With, I mentioned Oprah and Howard Stern. I don't know if either of those are interesting stories or both.
Yeah. So Oprah, we were, I never actually met her, but I got to meet her people. And they were doing a story for her magazine, her favorite things. And she had received a Lobster Gram from, I never really figured out who it was, but from one of her friends, and just fell in love with it, loved it. So she had one of her producers call me up. I remember I'm sitting at the office, the Lobster Gram World Headquarters, and this person calls up and says they're from Oprah. And, this is like 95-ish, 7-ish, whatever. She was like the queen of all the queens of everything. And so this person's on the phone saying, yeah, I'm one of Oprah's producers and we'd like to, do a story on Lobster Gram, put it in one of her favorite things. And we're actually thinking of devoting a full page to it. I'm thinking, all right, which one of my a-hole friends is this? That's exactly what I thought. And I actually said that. And she goes, no, you misunderstand. And I'm all of a sudden, I go, oh my gosh, I think I just ruined this. And so I go, oh, I'm so sorry. And she goes, no, we really want to do it. And so they ended up doing it. And it was a full page.
Wow. It
looked like an ad. I mean, it was unbelievable. And we sold the tales from around the world was the package. So there were 7 different types of tales from all over the country, or excuse me, the world. And each one tasted different, or each one looked different. It was really beautiful.
Wow.
They did a great job of styling it. But with Howard was interesting because I go to meet Howard. First, I sit in the studio off, and just watching the craziness that's going on. And he is on air. He is just crazy. I don't know. He's just got so much energy. So I'm like ready for this guy that's just, whoop, 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 and he comes out. I go to shake his hand, and he does one of those and does a fist bump. So now this is normal, right? But back then, someone doesn't shake your hand, you're just like, oh my gosh, what did I do, right? Well, he was one of those, germaphobe guys, right?
It's good for during COVID.
Yeah, good now. It's like he was a pioneer, he's been a pioneer in everything. And so I'm kind of just like at a loss. And he goes, all right, tell me what you do. And so, and he's tall. I forget. He's like 6'4" or something. And I'm like 5'8". So I'm like this talking to him the whole time. And he is really introverted. I mean, he was very, almost shy. So I'm telling him about Lobster Gram, what I'm doing. And he goes, all right. He goes, you got about 60 more seconds. And so I've been talking, I don't know, for maybe 2 minutes. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay. And so I hurry up and cram it all in there. And he goes, okay, we'll do a great job for you. Thanks. And he walks, turns around and poof, gone. I'm like, wow. And then Baba Booey, Gary, he looks at me, he goes, wow. He goes, you've gotten more time than the executives of Coca-Cola ever have.
Wow.
He goes, this is going to be great. And he goes, and I'll make sure. He goes, make sure you send one to me as well. And I'll make sure when he brings it up. And he goes, you know what? You should send one to Robin too. And they literally became great clients, Robin and Baba Booey. So that was just one of those, not very conservative, but but he was just one of those guys, just great at doing live reads. And just loved the product too. And again, I think just by meeting him and him realizing that I came all the way from Chicago, because I was still in Chicago at the time, that it was really meant something. And it wasn't this faceless agency that most people, they deal with.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. That's Dan, another turning point, it seemed to be when you had your own warehouse and you were experiencing some pieces that from the different suppliers.
So my first warehouse, quote unquote, was my 2-car garage. Well, actually the first one.
Your trunk.
Yeah, the trunk. At the time, I was in my office, was in the old county morgue building in Peoria, Illinois, which was built in 1854. And my warehouse.
The morgue building.
Yeah, the morgue.
I guess it's fitting that you are sending live things
in the morgue.
Yeah.
But when this is 1850s, low ceilings, my packing table, literally, this is so morbid, was the old embalming tables was what I used to, assemble the packages together. It's gross. And it was haunted. I don't know if you believe in ghosts or anything like that, but the weirdest things would happen in that place. But my original warehouse then was my garage in Chicago. It was a 2-car garage, and that worked out pretty good. And then I actually built by scratch a warehouse in Maine because I figured, hey, I got to go to Maine, right? People don't want their lobsters from Chicago anymore. They want it from Maine. So I bought a warehouse in Maine. I remember trying to find somebody that could help me design it. People were just like, what? There's no such thing, right? So how I designed it was a big open space. I got about 10 rolls of duct tape. And I literally just put, here's the freezer, and I tape it out. I go, okay, here's where the trucks come in to load the pots in, to load the coolers. So then I would draw an arrow on it, as the flow. Here's where the lobster tank is, because this is where the lobsters need to be assembled. And it was the craziest thing. And I remember talking to a contractor, to build this all. And he's like, yeah, do you have plans? I go, oh, yeah. So he comes over and he goes, where's the plans? I point to the ground. I go, right here. And he's like, those aren't plans. I go, yeah, but this is my vision. This is where I want the freezer to go. This is where I want this and this. And he just started cracking up. But he ended up drawing the plans. we hired an architect, and it worked out, and I had that for 15 years.
And that was because you had suppliers that weren't as, they weren't as excited about the business. Was that?
Well, yeah. So before then, I had some suppliers that were in Massachusetts, and they did a good job, I would say. Not a great job, the quality control. So a lot of times there's what we call weak lobsters, right? They're just not as strong. And so they would, you got 1,000 lobsters. There's going to be a couple that aren't just strong enough. So they wouldn't really check out the quality and that, and they'd put them in there, and guess what? People would get them, and they would be DOAs, right? And my guarantee was 100% happiness. That was it. So if it was a dead lobster, that wasn't 100% happiness. And so I would have to refund their money or ship another package out, right? And so it just wasn't working. Of course, somebody would at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they say, oh, I got to send a Lobster Gram to my dad. His birthday's tomorrow. Can you get it out, right? We'd get on the phone with our fulfillment center. It would be like, oh, yeah, just one more. And they'd be like, no, everybody's gone. We can't do it. And after a year of that, I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. I need my own people. And of course, having your own staff has its own set of issues as it is, but it worked out. We had 128 people around the holidays, and that became more of a job than a company, I guess.
I want to talk about EOS and what you do now, but talk about the transition, the thought, between selling and then, actually running for Moore's.
So it was about, I sold it in 2017. So about 2015, I was becoming disillusioned, I think is a good word. And you talked about the visionary and integrator, okay? I had no idea, right? I am a total visionary, obviously, starting a lobster company in Chicago, right? So I got to the point, probably when we hit about 10-ish million in sales, where I was forced to become the manager / the integrator, making sales, marketing, operations, HR, IT, all the crap work together. And I hated it, right? I hated it. I wanted to go kiss babies, shake hands with suppliers, close big deals, make new packages, go source new products around the world, stuff. That was the good stuff. Not managing people. I hated that. And so I just literally wanted to sell my company. And so I read the book, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need an integrator, which was, in those days, a president. I need a president. So I found a president, great guy, still friends. He did a great amount of work there, really put the company back, grew quicker. But 3 years later, after doing it for 27 years, I just literally was burned out. We did 50% of our sales in November and December. I hated Christmas. Matter of fact, I hated Christmas. It was my birthday is October 30th. So on Halloween, I started hating life, because that's when we started to plan everything. And it was getting to be literally not a great life. And it was sad. And I felt my family was getting older, and I'm gone. So that's when I decided to sell the company. And I got into a few issues with my bank. Who doesn't? Basically, I bought too much inventory, and I had leftover inventory, and the bank was kind of like, well, pony up some big bucks, or, figure something else out. And I'm like, I'm just going to sell it. And so I did. And I knew, though, that I had a lot to give, right? I wanted to do EOS, and I wanted to teach people the 33 years of being in the trenches, all the good, the bad, and the ugly, but have a system, right? Because EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System, is I wish I would have had that. Oh my gosh, if I would have had that, it would have been such a easier, better life, right? EOS is all about living a better life. And I get such great satisfaction working with my clients. And matter of fact, all my clients are friends, and I love working with them. And, you know, finding your second passion in life, finding your first passion in life. I mean, how many people do? You know, you interview the people that do, but think about the other 95%.
Well, a lot of times the people they do, it wasn't their first iteration. It may have been their like 11th stab at something, right? Of just figuring out what they do like.
Yeah, that could, I just, like I said, accidental, boom, first company, first time I even tried to start a company. Who knew it would work? But I always wanted to be a teacher. And what gets me up in the morning now is helping out my clients. And I love it. I am so happy that I'm, you know, able to do this kind of important work.
Let's talk about, there's a company that buys and sells homes.
Yeah.
How did they present to you, and then talk about what you do with them?
So when we first met, it was just 4 people. And this was last December I worked with them. And they realized they just didn't have the right structure. And EOS is literally building the right structure, the roles. We call it the accountability chart. Some people call it an organizational chart. It's different, but just kind of similar. And they were real serious guys. So, but fun guys, right? They're still fun. And so we literally did a pivot. And this year, I am so proud of these guys, and I'm not taking any of the credit because they did all the work, but they're gonna make almost $900,000. So we went from losing to gaining that. 2 guys, they've hired a bunch of people. They know their focus. They have their core values. You know, they're following the process. They're working really hard, and they're having more free time than they ever did before. And it's just great to see that. I mean, I'm one of those people where I think, you know, the pie is only this big. When my clients can grow, that's what I want to see. That's what makes me get up in the morning.
What was a big piece of advice for them?
Basically, get a structure and quit getting in front of each other and duplicating stuff. And that your present business model is literally not working because you're not making any money. And we literally spent 4 hours, we call it IDSing. I don't know if Gino talked about it, but it's identifying, discussing, and solving. So we spent 4 hours figuring out what a pivot would be. And we did it, and it worked. They really put the time and the effort into doing it. But really building that structure and the core focus. Stay in this silo, and let's just do this. Don't go out. Don't grab the shiny things, right? Right?
It's tough sometimes.
Oh my God, I used to do it at Lobster Gram all the time. It was one of my weaknesses, but that's what I tell my clients now. I said, that was one of the reasons, you know, I mean, we got to 15 million in sales, but I probably could have got there a lot quicker if I would have focused more on it, not the shiny things.
And then there was an HVAC company.
Yeah, still my client. Love those guys. Great company. Been around for 60 years.
Wow.
And again, one of the things, been working with them for about 1.5 years, is the structure. So you can see behind me is a whiteboard because I draw everything out. Because if you can't draw it out, it's probably a bunch of BS, is my opinion, right?
Totally.
So we draw out the accountability chart. Literally one of the first things I do when I meet with a client. And so when we started building out the structure, literally, and I'm not exaggerating, for the first hour, the board was completely blank because everybody was running over everybody. Nobody had defined roles. Everybody was doing a little this, a little that, little this. what was happening, nobody was doing anything great. But they still had monster sales in their space. So what we did, it took literally 4 months to get a great accountability chart, and because it was a total pivot from where 150 people in there that were working there, everybody was kind of just running all over the place. So we literally, that was it, building a structure and coming up with core values that literally were at the heart and soul of their people, and making sure we had the right people. Jim Collins, right? Good to great, right people, right seats. So there was a lot of that. And to me, that's one of the hardest things I think for my clients to do is, you have people that have been there a long time, but they just don't have your core values, or they're just not they're not in the right seat. And that's a hard call to make, really a hard call to make.
Dan, how'd you come up with 4 mores?
I love this. So one day I'm on the whiteboard and I'm telling people, I go, we need to build a structure, right? Because people go, no, we have the vision first. I go, no, structure first, vision second. So I write on there, structure. Okay. And I go, and if we have the right structure, we're going to grow. So I put on there growth. And then I go, and if we grow, because we have the right structure, we're going to grow profitably. And I wrote on there profit. And if you grow and if you have structure and the profit, you're going to have fun. And I wrote fun. And I said, because if you can't have fun, you might as well get a real job. And then somebody looked at it and they go, oh, that's the 4 mores. And I wrote on top, I go, the 4 mores. And then we went to lunch. And I went to GoDaddy and I bought 4mores.com for like $11. And then I bought the 4 mores, the 4 mores group. I bought all the iterations of it. And because my company used to be called the Traction Vision Group. So you can imagine telling somebody, Dan at Traction Vision Group. It's like 26 characters. And then all of a sudden you come up with, oh, it's Dan at 4 mores, and use the number 4. People are like, oh. So so now actually when I talk to my clients, they'll be like, yeah, I want some of that 4 mores, Dan. So it's, I trademarked it too. So that's pretty cool.
And first of all, I have one last question. It's a loaded question.
Oh, boy.
And it has to do with the 25 things in 33 years. So it's actually more than one question. It's one question that will unlock magic. But before we talk about that, Dan, I want to point people to your website. And people can go to 4, the number 4, like you said, mores.com. And I guess, how can people best engage with you? Who are ideal clients for you?
Oh, so ideal clients for me are entrepreneurial. Okay. And the next question I ask people, I say, do you want to grow? And if people say, no, I'm pretty happy where they're at, I go, save your money, do what you're doing, right? So entrepreneurial, they need to grow. And it could be anywhere from, like I said, I had a startup that I worked with to an $80 million company that I work with. So it's anywhere in between, but it's people that literally want to live a better life, that their business is maybe taking over their life. That happened to me. They don't have the right people. What do you do? And that happened to me. There's no accountability, right? That happened to me. I just would tell people one thing here and I expect them to listen. Of course, that never happened. The visionary in me.
4mores.com. Check it out. Check out, there's some great information there. So Dan, last question is, you have these 25 things in 33 years that you have discovered from being in the trenches. So I'm wondering if you could share some of those.
I'll share a couple of the good. Well, they're all good, but
you could share all of them if you want. I don't know how long each of them are.
Yeah, well, each one's a sentence, so it'll be a while. But I should put these on my website. Actually, maybe I'll do that. Thanks,
That's what we're gonna do.
All right. So
I want to say, is this printed out right now, or is it is it handwritten?
oh no, I'm big times now.
Okay,
it's
cool.
Traction Vision.
I want the handwritten version.
Oh, I think I threw that out actually. But I guess one of the biggest ones that is don't overthink your plan. Right? Make it short and concise and a couple pages. If you can't get your idea in a couple pages, then it's probably a bunch of BS. I mean, they got these software programs out there and they're all loaded. It's all cut and paste. And guess what? I have a ton of friends that are bankers and own PE firms. They can smell that right away. And they just they want to see, have a few grammatical errors in there. They don't want it to be all perfect and pretty. Have a great story to tell. Every single entrepreneur that I ever met, and I'll ask you this question too, they all have a great story. Some of them just don't know it or they don't get it out. But the ones that have really done a great job, they get it out. And I think my favorite one is expect victory. And I'm just going to say it. When the shit hits the fan, you just got to overcome it. Right? Expect victory. I love that. And don't listen to the pessimists. They're all out there. Most of them are going to be jealous of you. And just stay away from them like the plague. And every employee should be responsible for some measurable of what brings success to the business. I don't care if you're like one of my clients, they have a full-time janitor. His measure is once a week, he's got to make sure that manufacturing and all the office floors and everything are completely clean and you can eat off that dang floor. And he's great at his job and he can do it better than anybody else. I'll just tell you one thing, keep your debt low. I got sucked into a $3 million debt, and I'll tell you what, you don't sleep too good. And there's some other good ones.
Let's end on a positive one. I suppose you not being able to sleep at night.
I got a great one.
Yeah.
Be nice to everyone and be an optimist. That's going to go to sleep. And you never know the next person you're talking to. Oh my gosh, you know, just because they dress grungy, just because maybe they drive a beat up car or whatever, they might be a multi-millionaire that wants to buy your company, or at least be your friend, be a friend, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned over the years. Be nice and be an optimist, because if you're a pessimist, don't try and start a company.
Our friend Justin Breen would echo those words and says that a lot about being an optimist. So Dan, I want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone check out fourmores.com. Check out more and check out more episodes. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. It's been awesome. You're a great interviewer.
Thanks, Dan.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I feel like $100 grand.